Triple E EDC back again with another knife video. We're going to do a comparison video of these two knives. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce them right, but this is the Benchmade Leuku and the Benchmade Puukko. Now, the Puukko obviously has been around for a little bit. The Leuku is a little bit newer. And we're going to take a look at the fixed blades, a little bit of sheaths, where they sit in the market, and a comparison to each other a little bit. So let's go ahead and do some size comparisons first. Let's go ahead and put them up against a couple of other Benchmades. This is the Benchmade Griptilian. So you can see the Puukko is actually pretty similarly sized to the Benchmade Griptilian. This is the Benchmade Super Freak. A little bit bigger than the Puukko, smaller than the Leuku. Here is the Spyderco Shaman. Again, about the same size as the Puukko, but smaller than the Leuku. And let's go ahead and do some larger knives. This is the Medford Marauder, getting closer in size to that Leuku. And let's go ahead and do Benchmade Bugout, just so you guys can see for size. And then a couple of fixed blades, because we need to know, some standard size options. So this is the Bark River Gunny. This is the Gunny Scandi. But you can see that the Gunny Scandi is a little bit bigger than the Puukko, smaller than the Leuku. You can also see the Bark River Squad Leader. This is the Bravo 1 Squad Leader. And so now you're about the same size as the Leuku over here if you measure all the way out to the pommel. And you're definitely bigger than the Puukko. And you do a couple other size options here in fixed blades. This is the Benchmade Altitude. Going to be smaller than both of these. And I think that's about it for size comparisons. Let's do one more. The Bradford Guardian, common fixed blade. Much smaller, obviously, than both of these. This is the Guardian 3. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the good, the bad of these, and a little bit of a comparison. So first of all, the Benchmade Leuku comes with sheath. This is the leather sheath it comes with, and the Puukko comes with this leather sheath. These are decent leather sheaths. They're not amazing, I should say. A lot of the Bark River ones come with really, really nice sheaths. You can definitely see the really good quality detail stitching over here. And you've got the stamp logo there. Sometimes you'll get a little bit, the stamp won't be in the right place. You guys probably saw that on my other video. But for the most part, these Bark River sheaths are very, very good and very nice thick leather. These Benchmade sheaths are also leather, but the quality on them seems a little bit lower. That being said, they definitely serve the purpose of what they're doing, and they come with these little plastic inserts over here. I don't know if I can pull it out or not, but maybe you can see it here. There's little plastic inserts, and that protects the sheath from being sliced open by the knife. But otherwise, the retention on this is decent, but not great. Most of the retention comes from the handle here, and the retention on something like this from Bark River, or obviously with a retention strap, is going to be much, much better. Now, as far as the stitching on here, you can see the stitching is good but not great. And you can see there's some issues with the double over here and here. Same thing here. This one actually is much cleaner. So you can see there's a little bit of quality control with the sheaths. That being said, the dangler option on the sheaths is actually pretty good on both of these, and it doesn't ride too high on the hip. I think that generally some of the regular ones that come with, like if you took the dangler out and just use this as a belt loop, which you can do, and let me mention that real quick. You can either use this belt loop without the dangler, or you can use the dangler here. The dangler comes right off. If you use it here, for me, it rides up too high on the hip. The dangler makes it a much more accessible option. I prefer a horizontal carry for something this size. This size, it's probably good to use the dangler, but for the Puukko size, I definitely like the horizontal carry better. Both of these sheaths are going to come with, in addition to the danglers, they're going to come with fire steel loops on the outside that you can go ahead and put your fire steel in so that there is retention. An example of that, for those of you who maybe haven't seen that before, most of the people I think buying fixed blades are probably going to have seen that before, but you have a fire steel like this and it doubles over on itself and you pull it out, you've got the retention there and you put it back in. That's how it works. This is the White River Ursus, by the way, in case you guys were curious. This is another good leather sheath here, but this doesn't have a dangler option, and this one rides a little bit high. So you can see, you know, how that differs between a couple of companies. The knives themselves, let's go ahead and talk about the handles here. So the handles on this, I really like the handles. The handles on both of these are awesome. They're basically the same handle, the same size. If you can see here, same size handle here. I don't know if you can see that. And let's go ahead and measure them this way so you guys can see that this way, this dimension. Basically the same handle. So the difference in these two sizes is going to come almost entirely in the blades. But either way, let's go ahead and put this to the side and we'll go ahead and talk about the handle on the Puukko. So the handle on the Puukko is, which is the same handle on the Leuku, it's really, really nice. It really fills the entire hand. It's very, very hand-filling. It has this Santoprene, it is full tang, by the way. It goes all the way through. You can see that right there is part of the tang. The entire tang is covered though, it's hidden tang, but it is full tang. If you want to watch a video where somebody opens this up, Zach from Zach's Stuff, I believe, cut this open, and you can really see that it's a full tang knife. That being said, like I said, it is very hand-filling. What does this texture feel like? Well, this texture feels like it is solid plastic, not like the Benchmade Griptilian, which feels very hollow. But this feels like a solid plastic. However, it's not really, when I say plastic, I'm talking about the rigidity. The rigidity feels like solid plastic, but the actual feeling of it feels a little bit like rubber. It's very grippy, but because of the fact that it's solid, there's little to no give. You know, when you really hold this thing tight, there's little to no give on it. So what that means is you're going to have a really, really solid grip in any type of wet conditions or dry conditions, either one. And the grip on here is going to aid in doubling down on that solid grip. So this grip texture on here, this diamond grip, and the texturing on the bottom and top, combined with the rubbery feel of the handle, this thing is very secure. It's not going anywhere. The fact that there's no guard here is not a problem. By the way, you guys who worry about there being a guard on your fixed blades, I mean, are you really jabbing stuff, you know, that you need a guard on there? I don't think you'd need one anyway on this particular knife, but I mean, if you're using your knife that way, you might have an issue. In any event, this is not meant to be, you know, a self-defense. It's a camp knife. So you shouldn't be stabbing it in anything. You should be just going ahead and using it for woodworking tasks, or, you know, could you baton with this one? Yeah, you could, but this one's more for if you're going to do that. Well, we're still talking about the handles here. The fact that there is a lanyard hole on here, I really enjoy the lanyard hole on here. It is not in the way, it's out of the way. If you want a lanyard, it's there. If you don't want a lanyard, it doesn't really matter. So it doesn't bother me in the least. It does stick out far enough from the handle where your hand's not covering it anyway. So if you do want a lanyard, you're not going to be covering up the lanyard or feeling that lanyard on your palm while you're cutting. It's just a very well-designed handle all around. In fact, if I had to rate the handle, I would probably rate it maybe a 9.5 out of 10. I mean, it's an excellent handle. The only drawback to it is that when you really bear down on the handle for lengthy periods of time and you're doing, you know, some woodworking or lengthy cutting, what ends up happening is that all that texturing and the rigidity of it ends up going into your hand a little bit. I don't know if you can see that, but it you know, digs into your hand a little bit. And I guess that's the biggest issue I have with it. That being said, is it a hot spot? Not really. But you need to make sure you hold this in a way that's not going to irritate your hand right here, because you are going to have some rubbing against your hand. And if you, because it's a rubbery feel, you might get a blister or something if you're not careful. Other than that, you know, this is just almost perfect handle. Now that's not to say that, whoops, drop something. That's not to say that I don't enjoy something like the gunny here. I really do enjoy the gunny and the handle here. Now, while purple's not my personal taste, the burlap micarta on this is awesome. However, it's not nearly as grippy as the Santoprene on this handle. So, you know, this is one of those times where this is an issue of function over form. So, you know, what's more attractive? Obviously, the Bark River is more attractive, but the function on this actually works much better than the Bark River. And I'm talking about the handle, not necessarily the overall knife. The Bark Rivers are great. So the next thing is, what's great about this knife is the steel. Steel on these is 3V. There's been some argument about the heat treat on the Benchmade does on its 3V. I have had no issues. You know, if you guys want to get into all the metallurgy and everything behind it and the heat treat, you know, there are some channels out there that deal with that stuff. I'm just telling you, in my use of these knives, and in my use of other 3V knives from Benchmade, the Bailout, I have had no issues with the heat treat, none. And the edge retention has been great. The toughness has been great. Really have had no issues. And 3V on one of these knives is really what the draw is on this thing. Next thing is the value. These things are excellent values. I mean, just mind-blowing values. If you're going to look for, you know, Bark River is one of the standards in the fixed blade world, and if you're looking at a Bark River in 3V for just a basic Bark River, maybe a Canadian Special, or some of the other, you know, knives that are going to be used for woodworking, not woodworking, but bushcraft. If you're going to be using a knife for bushcraft, probably what you're looking at is around $200 starting for 3V, just starting, and that's if, you know, for some of the less popular models. You know, if you're going to get the more popular models, the Gunny, the Bravo 1, any of those types of things, you're going to be going up from there. You're probably looking in the mid 200s or higher. To show you how good of a value this is 3V. This is $140 and this is $127. So you're getting 3V for, you can get two of these in 3V essentially for what you could get one Bark River in 3V for. So that's mind-blowing in and of itself, is what Benchmade's able to do. And this is a brand that's not known for having value on their folders, especially. You know, a lot of their folders are, Nick Shabazz calls it the butterfly tax, where you're paying extra for the Benchmade name, the Benchmade warranty, and here you're just getting amazing value. So I can wax poetic all day about how great of a value this is, with the steel and the handle and everything else. It's fantastic. Now that goes for both of these knives. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the blade shape and the blade grind. So the blade grind on these, so this is called a Puukko. It is not a Scandi grind. A Scandi grind is essentially a true V-edge. This is, obviously, it has a secondary bevel here, as you can see. So it's not a zero grind. It also isn't a Scandi Vax like the, you know, the Bark River. Let me pull the Bark River out again. You can see this is a Scandi Vax where it has no secondary bevel, but it's convexed into the Scandi grind. If you ask Mike Stewart, by the way, he'll tell you a Scandi Vax grind doesn't exist, and he'll also talk about Scandi's grinds in general not existing the way people think. But in any event, this is a V-edge. It's a V-edge knife. It's a saber grind, essentially, with a secondary bevel, done in a way that evokes, you know, a Puukko here, but not necessarily a Scandi. Same thing with this Leuku. You can see the V grind here. Now, is there a problem with that? You know, I mean, V-grinds are, I guess, are not as respected in the bushcraft world, so if you're a bushcraft guy, it's not quite as respected. That being said, again, for the amazing value, I don't think that's a big deal. And if you know, for the price you're paying, and if you really want a convex edge, you can convex this yourself. So, you know, it definitely would take a little bit of doing, but you can convex it yourself. And so I don't think that's that big of a deal. Let's go ahead and talk about the difference between these two and which one I recommend. So some of the differences between these two obviously are the blade length. So the Puukko is going to be the shorter of the two, obviously, and this is going to be really for close quarter tasks, for when you're doing some feather sticking or you know, short woodworking. I sort of make I've made some swords and knives for my kids out of you know, wood we found in the woods. This one is I've started on this one. I haven't finished it yet, but this was done with the Puukko. So you know, you can see that you still get pretty, you know, good. You can do quite a bit with the V-edge, is what I'm trying to say here. The big difference, though, is going to be how these feel in hand. And a lot of that has to do with the balance point. So the balance point on the Puukko is here, which means it's well behind the guard, or where the guard would be. The reason that's important is because that means the knife is back heavy. And so when you use it, you're going to feel like you have amazing control up front of this knife. So for very small detailed tasks, if you're doing small detailed tasks, this knife is going to be way better than the Leuku. The balance point on the Leuku, by contrast, is going to be right up by the guard. And what that means is it's going to be more balanced for, you know, whatever type of task you're doing. Now, while you could sit here and baton with this knife if you wanted to, obviously, you know, batoning with any knife isn't the most ideal. It's going to do pretty well because it has a it has the saber grind, which is going to be able to split the wood. You also have plenty of length to do it. I shouldn't say plenty of length, but enough length to do it. You don't really have enough length with this. It can be done, but not as easily. You know, and so you can baton with this. Both of these are going to have edges that are not on the back of the spine here, that are not completely square. So what that means is they're going to work with fire steels, and they will work with fire steels. I have tested it, but they are not going to. They're not going to strike a fire steel as easily as something with a completely squared off edge. The Leuku can be, you know, if you get back on here, you can get enough, you know, weight to try to chop with it, but I wouldn't suggest it. I would actually say it's a pretty terrible chopper, and the reason for that is, number one, the size. It's not quite big enough to be a chopper. Number two, the weight. It's not heavy enough to be a chopper, and so what ends up happening is you're basically going to be using you know, a lot of force to get it done, which is going to put a lot of reverberation or vibration in your hand. I don't recommend chopping with this knife. So if you're getting something that you're hoping is going to baton and chop, I do not recommend the Puukko or the Leuku. But like I said, either way, this is you know, it is good for batoning. And it is good for, you can still get up very close and do the woodworking tasks you need to do, albeit with slightly less control than the Puukko. Those are the major differences between the two, and obviously the drawbacks, like I said, are the, well, let's go over the benefits and the drawbacks. So the benefits obviously are, the good is the handle, the steel, the price, and the, you know, I find it to be a very tough edge as well. The feel in hand, the weight, if you like a lightweight knife, this is definitely a good for, you know, a positive for you. And the placement of the lanyard holes and it being full tang. Those are all the good. The bad on these is going to be the lack of a real, you know, squared off edge that you can use for fire steel. That being said, just like you can convex it yourself, you can still square off the edges yourself if you want to. And also the fact that it's a V-edge, you know, some people, especially bushcraft guys, are going to want probably a convex edge. Again, you can convex it yourself. And as far as the weight goes, these are weighted much more for close quarter, you know, bushcraft skills that are not chopping and things like that. And if you want a dedicated batoner, I wouldn't recommend this as a dedicated batoner, but it'll work in a pinch. So that's all the good and the bad. Obviously, some of the differences, like we said, the differences are going to be the size, where they're weighted, and a little bit in the price. They're only about $13 apart. Hope this has been helpful for you guys. Oh, one more bad thing, obviously, was the sheath. While being adequate, is not stellar. Let's go ahead and take a look at them one more time in the sheaths before I sign off. And while I remind you that you can go ahead and subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell if you want all my content. I do a lot of giveaways, so keep that in mind, and go ahead and hit the like button, drop a comment. Let me know if you've used either one of these knives, and if you have used both, which one you like better and why. Love to hear your comments. Thanks, guys.